If you ever find a house in America that appears on Google Maps, but has no name in any official government records, never go inside, because that house might already be waiting for you. My name is Jack Carter. I create documentaries about abandoned and mysterious places across the United States. This happened in October 2025. Late one night, I received a strange email. There was no subject, no sender's name, just a single photograph. It showed an old, two-story wooden house. Every window was completely black. At the bottom of the email was one sentence: "Find this house if you want the truth." There was nothing else, only the photo and a GPS location. At first, I thought it was a prank, but my curiosity got the better of me. The next morning, I entered the coordinates into Google Maps. The location appeared instantly, but when I tried to view information about the property, there was nothing. No street view, no property details, no history, nothing at all. I searched the county property records. According to the official records, that location was nothing but an empty piece of land, as if the house had never existed. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. 2 days later, I packed my camera, flashlight, and spare batteries and drove to Vermont. It was around 6 p.m. Dark storm clouds covered the sky. A light rain had begun to fall. The GPS led me down a lonely country road. The road ended, and standing in front of me was the exact same house from the photograph. Old wooden walls, broken windows, and the front door half open. I switched on my camera. Today we're documenting the house that officially doesn't exist. I slowly walked through the front gate. One thing immediately felt strange. For a house this old, there was almost no dust. It looked as if someone still lived there. I stopped at the front door and called out, "Hello? Is anyone inside?" No one answered, but from somewhere inside the house, I heard slow, heavy footsteps. I froze. A few seconds later, everything went silent again. I told myself, it's probably just the old wood settling. But then, without a single gust of wind, the front door slowly opened all the way by itself. Inside, there was only darkness. On my camera's screen, the hallway looked completely empty. But when I looked with my own eyes, I could swear someone was standing at the far end of the hall. I pointed the camera toward the figure. The screen showed nothing. No one was there. I lowered the camera, looked again with my own eyes, and this time, the shadow took one slow step toward me. For a moment, I couldn't move. On my camera's screen, the hallway was completely empty, but with my own eyes, I could clearly see someone standing at the far end of the hall. I looked back at the camera display. Nothing. Then I looked up again. The figure was gone. I took a deep breath. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Slowly, I stepped inside the house. The moment my foot crossed the doorway, bang! The front door slammed shut behind me. I spun around and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. I pulled with all my strength, but it felt as if the door had been welded shut from the outside. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm, Jack. Find another way out." I switched on my camera light. The inside of the house looked even older than the outside. The paint was peeling from the walls. The wooden floor groaned beneath every step. But something didn't make sense. For a house this old, there was almost no dust. It looked as if someone walked through it every single day. In the center of the hallway stood an old grandfather clock. Its hands were frozen at 3:13. Then, without any reason. Tick, tick, tick. The clock suddenly started working. I instinctively stepped back. At that exact moment, I heard slow footsteps coming from the second floor. Each step was heavy, clear, like someone wearing old leather boots, walking across wooden boards. I aimed my flashlight upstairs. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. After a few seconds, I decided to climb the stairs. First step, second, third, and then a voice whispered directly behind me, soft, cold, almost breathing into my ear. Don't look back. A chill shot through my entire body. I turned around immediately. No one was there. But later, when I checked the recording, my camera's microphone had captured the whisper perfectly. I hurried the rest of the way upstairs. At the top, there was only a long hallway. 6 old doors, 3 on each side. I opened the first one. The room was completely empty. Just a broken wooden chair and a large mirror hanging on the wall. I looked into the mirror. At first, I saw only myself. Then, standing directly behind me, was a tall figure dressed entirely in black. I spun around. Nothing. No one. I looked back at the mirror. The figure had disappeared. I forced myself to stay calm. This house is playing tricks on my mind. I walked back into the hallway. Then I froze. The hallway had changed. There weren't 6 doors anymore. There were only 3. The other 3 had vanished. I looked behind me. The room I had just walked out of was gone too, as if it had never existed. And then, at the very end of the hallway, one of the remaining doors slowly opened by itself. From inside, I heard the quiet laughter of a child. At the end of the hallway, the door stood open, and from inside, I could hear the laughter of a small child. Ha, ha, ha. There was nothing innocent about it. It sounded like something was calling me closer. I pointed my camera toward the room. On the camera screen, the room was completely empty. But with my own eyes, I could clearly see a little boy peeking from behind the door. Only half of his face was visible. His eyes were completely black. I took one cautious step forward. The boy slowly backed away. I followed him into the room. Inside was an old child's bed, a wooden rocking horse, and toys scattered across the floor. Everything looked as if a family had abandoned the house without warning. Then, a small red ball began rolling across the floor by itself. Slowly, it stopped right at my feet. I never touched it. But the moment I looked up, the room had changed. The window that had been on the wall was gone. In its place was nothing but solid brick. I immediately turned to leave, but the door had disappeared. I was trapped. My breathing became faster. I looked around the room. That's when I noticed an old family photograph hanging on the wall. I walked closer. In the picture, there was a husband, a wife, and their young son. But when I looked more carefully, there was a 4th person standing behind them. The face was completely black, as if someone had deliberately erased every feature. Then, the little boy in the photograph slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. I stumbled backward in terror. Now, everyone in the photograph was staring at me. Then, all at once, they smiled. Without thinking, I kicked the wooden wall as hard as I could. The old board shattered. Behind them was a narrow passage. I squeezed inside. The passage sloped downward, toward the basement. With every step, the air became colder. When I reached the bottom, I switched on my flashlight. The entire basement was filled with old cameras, stacks of videotapes, and dust-covered tripods. Hundreds of cameras, as if countless people had come here, trying to record whatever lived inside this house, but none of them had ever made it back out. Then, a single camera, its red recording light, turned on by itself. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire basement was glowing red from hundreds of recording lights. And then, every camera speaker played the exact same voice at the exact same time. Welcome home, Jack. I froze because I had never told anyone in that house my name. Welcome home, Jack. The voices echoed from hundreds of cameras at once. They were so loud. My ears began to ring with pain. I stumbled backward. Then, one by one, every camera screen turned on. The first screen showed me. I was standing in the same basement, in the exact spot where I was now. But it wasn't a live feed. At the bottom of the screen was a date, October 14th, 2024. I froze. This was my first time in this house, so how could there already be footage of me? Then more screens came to life. Each one showed a different person. A police officer, a journalist, a paranormal investigator. Every one of them had entered this same house, and every recording ended the same way. The video suddenly stopped. The screen went black, and that person was never seen again. I picked up one of the old VHS tapes. An old VCR sat on a dusty table nearby. I inserted the tape and pressed play. A terrified man appeared on the screen. His voice trembled as he spoke. If you're watching this, then it's already too late. This house doesn't kill people. It keeps them. The tape suddenly cut out. The screen went black. Then a single word appeared. Next, at that exact moment, every light in the basement went out. Only my flashlight remained. Then, I felt it. Someone standing directly behind me. Slowly, I turned the flashlight around. Nothing, no one, but on the dusty floor. There was another set of footprints, not mine. They were appearing, one step at a time, moving closer to me, even though no one was there. I backed away. Suddenly, bang! The basement door slammed shut. I ran to it, pulled with all my strength. It wouldn't open. Then, the whispers began. At first, just one voice, then 10, then hundreds, all repeating the same word. Stay. 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 I covered my ears. But the voices weren't coming from the room anymore. They were inside my head. Suddenly, my flashlight landed on the wall, scratched deep into the wood, as if carved by someone's fingernails, was a message. Don't let the house know you're afraid. The moment I finished reading it, the entire house shook violently. It didn't feel like an earthquake. It felt as if the house itself had just come alive. Then, the farthest wall of the basement slowly split down the middle. Behind it was an old iron door. Rust covered every inch of it. Across the center, 2 words were carved into the metal. Do not open. I stared at the door, and at that exact moment, from the other side, came 3 slow knocks. Behind the iron door, the same 3 knocks echoed again. I stood frozen for a few seconds. Only one thought kept running through my mind. If there's something behind this door, maybe it's the only way out. With trembling hands, I grabbed the handle. It was freezing cold, like a block of ice. Slowly, I pulled the door open. There wasn't a room behind it, just a long, pitch-black hallway. Hundreds of old wooden doors lined both sides. Every door had a name carved into it. I walked forward. The first one read, Emily Carter. The second, David Wilson. The third, Michael Ross. There were hundreds of names, until suddenly, I stopped. The very last door read, Jack Carter. My heart started pounding. How is this possible? I've never been inside this house before. So why is my name here? At that moment, a deep voice spoke from behind me. Because this house chooses its next resident before they ever arrive. I spun around. Standing in the darkness was a tall black figure. It had no face, only two glowing white eyes, staring directly at me. I ran as fast as I could, but the hallway never ended. The more I ran, the longer it became. Then, out of nowhere, I saw the front door. I sprinted toward it, grabbed the handle, geeked up, and shoved it open with everything I had. The door flew open. I fell onto the cold ground outside. Fresh air hit my face for the first time. I thought I had escaped. I turned around, but the house was gone. There was nothing there, just an empty field, as if the house had never existed. Terrified, I ran to my truck, threw the camera onto the passenger seat, and drove away without looking back. 1 week later, I finally decided to review the footage, but something was wrong. Every room looked completely empty. Every shadow I had seen, every whisper I had heard, every door that had changed was gone. It looked like I had spent hours wandering through an abandoned house, completely alone. Then I opened the final video file, a file I never remembered recording. The camera was sitting outside the house. It showed me walking slowly toward the front door. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut. A few seconds later, someone appeared in the second floor window. The camera slowly zoomed in. My blood ran cold. It was me. I was standing behind the window, smiling. Slowly, I raised my hand and wrote on the glass with my finger, "I'll be waiting for you." The video suddenly cut to black. That night, I permanently deleted the footage. The next morning, the file was back on my laptop, exactly where it had been before. Only the file name had changed. It now read, "The house never lets you leave."